And so infrastructure is going to continue to be a real focus of ours in trying to get a two-party deal. But I did want to make you all aware of three other areas where we really think there's a chance for something to happen on a bipartisan basis. So there's infrastructure, but there are also really significant bipartisan discussions going on right now on policing, on immigration, and on the national minimum wage. And we are hearing real optimism that there is chances for compromises on all three of these. Now, this being Washington, we all know, we're all very familiar with the ways in which Washington and Congress can disappoint, and things that look promising can fall apart in the end. But the reason why I think on all three of those things, that at least conceptually, you can understand why there's an appetite for reform, is that if you go one by one, you can actually start to see that there is bipartisan agreement on some foundational goals. So like on policing, there is agreement on the big buckets of things that need to be done, having to do with putting tighter rules around things like no-knock warrants and having more information reporting from local police departments into the Justice Department. So we can be sure there's not racial disparities in how policing is happening. That there's the big hang up is this idea, there's something called qualified immunity, which has to do if a police officer is accused of misconduct, that police officer cannot be held personally liable. So you can sue a police department, you can sue like the city in which the police department sits. You can't sue the individual officer. And so there is, for understandable reasons, you want to make sure that's, if something like that were included, it was written the right way, and so it doesn't open good officers to getting hit by frivolous lawsuits. But with that said, what we're talking about here is directionally, you see agreement on where we need to go. They're just hashing out the particulars. It's the same thing with immigration, particularly as it relates to the dreamer issue. We talked to members on both sides. The average dreamer came here when they were 6 years old. The vast majority of them are in school, working, or in the military. Everybody wants the dreamers to stay. It's all about how do you figure out a sustainable solution, and how do you package it in a package that kind of clears the way for a two-party deal. So real discussions are happening there. And then the last one is on the minimum wage. And in particular, Mitt Romney and Kyrsten Sinema are the ones leading the charge here. Is the minimum wage has not been increased in, I think 15 years or more. I think it stands at like $7.25 an hour. There is broad agreement that needs to be higher. The issue with the $15 minimum wage that was debated is, to the extent there was resistance to it, there was just some concern that it didn't take enough account into regional variations. A $15 minimum wage might be fine in New York City. It might not fit the labor market in West Virginia. So I think what we're seeing is I don't know what the exact number is going to be, but it does seem like members are starting to coalesce around, one, a lower number, but two, one that would be, and this is actually probably the most important thing, that would be tied to like some measure of inflation or cost of living. So it would automatically go up over time as cost of living gets more expensive. And we wouldn't be stuck in this situation where they lift the minimum wage and then inflation eats it all up. And then 15 years later, we have to go do this debate again. So those are four big areas we see an opening. These are the areas that are going to be the focus of our next bicameral. And I'm happy to talk to you in more detail about any of these. But